Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McClernand, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, there's never a time I'm not excited about the guest that I have on today, but it's always extra special when I get to be joined by a fellow Canadian who is originally from Iran. So it's a bit of a swim to get from there to here. And I think there's probably a story connected to that. And we're going to want to explore that. But first off, Nicky, welcome to the show.
John, man, it's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me on, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into kind of your story, I'd like to let people know what you're up to right now and what am I interrupting by enjoying this fascinating conversation.
Oh, Jesus. Well, man, you're interrupting nothing because I booked this call. But
fair enough.
Before you and I got on the phone, I've got a friend and client. He's a psychiatrist here in Toronto who also happens to invest in real estate. So I'm kind of coaching him to double his income. He wants to make seven figures plus. So that's kind of where we're working on. And
yeah, who doesn't?
Good dude. You know, that's true. But maybe a communist. I don't know. But,
yeah, fair enough.
But he's a really good dude. And he's also part of a men's organization that I run. And tonight we have we twice a month, we go around the fire, bunch of us men. No matter the weather, we're always around the fire. And we sit down and we have a talk, you know.
I love that.
We talk about some real stuff. So that's kind of what's happening today.
Man, that's super fascinating. I absolutely love that because I think you're actually touching on a topic that I'm quite passionate about, and I call it positive masculinity because I think I don't want to say masculinity is under attack. Maybe that sounds a little bit
under attack.
Hyperbolic.
No, it's not hyperbolic. It's the truth. It's under attack. You're 100% correct.
And so I think, and one of the challenges we face is, first off, like we do have the issue of men not behaving all that well, but then when we try to redefine masculinity, it's often not coming from men. And that's a bit of a problem because I think we should be the ones speaking up and talking about what does authentic masculinity look like. And so maybe we'll just throw that question out there actually and hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think men are behaving badly in general. I think that there are men that behave badly, but they are a very, very small, tiny minority. But let's be honest, there are also women that behave badly, and they're a very, very small, tiny minority. But the media these days, being under the control of a bunch of oligarchs who want to push a particular narrative, they're just overblowing the fact that men behave badly. Now, here's something I want to tell you. This is not very well known. So nobody's in favor of domestic abuse. And the domestic abuse suffered by women is a terrible thing, and it shouldn't happen. And I'm glad that as a society, we're taking it seriously. And there are over 5,000 women's shelters in Canada. And there's over 6 billion a year that's being devoted to that from government and corporate and other parts. Now, here's something you may not know. The domestic abuse against men is almost as high as it is against women. Almost as high. Men report it way less because they're embarrassed. They're a guy. There's dudes that are 220 pounds whose 110-pound wife grabs stuff and beats them with it, and they don't tell anybody about it, right? And there's men that have to leave the home for that reason. Now there's only one shelter in all of Canada for abuse men. 5,000 for women, 1 for men.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Not that we should encourage men to be victims or anything like that. But I mean, there needs to be some understanding that these issues
some kind of
cut
support.
both ways.
Yeah,
These
absolutely.
issues cut both ways, and we need to do something about that. And the other thing is, look, here's the facts. Okay, 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, something horrible happened. The first communist revolution took hold in Russia under the leadership of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. And Lenin wanted to turn the whole world communist. And he saw that standing in his way was the West, in particular the United States. And he knew he could never defeat them in a straight up one-on-one fight, but he could subvert them from within. So he had a fellow communist, a German by the name of Willy Münzenberg. Mr. Münzenberg was dispatched by Lenin to the West to begin subverting the West from within with a group of folks. And that's what they started to do. They started to subvert the schools. They started to subvert storytelling, which was like, Hollywood and that sort of thing. And they started to subvert newspapers. So if you look at movies, academic curricula, and newspapers from back then, they were all pro-American, pro-Canadian, pro-traditional family. And 100 years later, all that's gone because these folks managed to infiltrate our culture and break us up from within. And you can look this up on YouTube. The KGB and the Chinese Ministry for State Security have been running these types of programs against the West for years. And we as a society never woke up to it, although individuals within our societies did. And one of the things that they wanted to do was to break up the family and denigrate masculinity. So that's part of what they've done. Now, interestingly enough, in their own countries, in Russia and China, masculinity is extolled. It's uplifted. You know what I'm saying? But not here.
I've heard it said that, because which brings up something interesting. There is, or I don't know how prolific it is at this point in time, but there's a culture in China known as sissy boys. And essentially it's men acting in a very feminine manner. And China really cracked down hard on this because they are trying to raise a more masculine culture. And so it's been said that like when leadership fears an external threat, they raise up their men, and when leadership fears an internal threat, they tear down their men.
That makes some sense, man. Makes some sense.
Yeah, and so I think we need more voices talking about what positive masculinity
100%.
looks like. Because we don't have a lot. I mean, I look back when I was growing up, we had like Rambo and Homer Simpson. Those are like the two extremes. That's what we got. You're either like a fat, lovable doofus who goes, right. He goes nowhere, or you got Rambo, who's this hyper masculine sort of invincible superhero. That's like, and it's like, well, where's the in between? Where's actually the realistic depiction of masculinity versus one that's like so far out of reach, or one that's like, I don't want to say a waste of time, but because Homer's entertained a lot of people, but it's just
Homer's not an ideal of masculinity. I mean, Rambo is to a point, right? And every man has within him the ability to be a Rambo if need be. If you've got to take care of your family or your country or your community, that's part of what men's job is. Right? And I just, this whole idea of positive masculinity, all masculinity is positive. This toxic masculinity is a sexist term designed to throw men down. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's only masculinity. There are men that behave badly. Like I said, there's no question. That's not masculine behavior. That's just men behaving badly, right? There's women that behave badly. That's not feminine behavior. That's just women behaving badly. It's something we all got to understand. And we got to push back against these people who use those phrases. If someone uses that phrase in front of me, I hit them hard. I call them sexist. I call them racist. If you know what I mean, because they usually use it toward minorities like myself. They're saying, "Oh, well, you're being." I'm not being toxic, man. I grew up in a society that valued men. It's about time this society started doing the same. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. So then, in your eyes, because I think this is interesting, and you said you grew up in a society that valued men. Now you grew up in Iran, and at what age did you emigrate from Iran to Canada?
Well, I left Iran when I was 13. We went to Greece for just under 2 years, and I got to Canada just a month shy of my 15th birthday.
Yeah. All right. So growing up in Iran, and if I might hazard a guess, are you over 50?
I'm 55.
55. Okay, so that was a safe bet. So you would have been growing up, I guess, in the 70s or so thereabouts in Iran.
Yeah. I can tell you my story.
Yeah. Well, let's learn a little bit about that, because I mean, I think, like, I love history and culture, and I think there's fascinating aspects of these different areas of the world that we often don't hear about, or the only time we ever hear about it is in a negative light. And so, what do you recall fondly about, like, growing up in that era?
Listen, growing up during the 70s in Iran, during the reign of the Shah, was amazing. Iran was a secular country. It was growing very fast. Young women dressed the way they did in the West. You could see them in bikinis on Iranian beaches. There was a wonderful sense of possibility and a great future. Then the Islamic Revolution happened. Right.
Yeah.
And my late father, God rest his soul, he could see the writing on the wall. This was not going to be a great place to raise a Christian family.
Right. So no kidding.
He got us out of there. We hightailed it out of there. And I thank God every day that he brought us to Canada. Canada is a free country. I know these days it's fashionable among certain circles to say Canada's so oppressive and it's so racist and it's so sexist. Bullshit. This is the most tolerant nation ever. Yeah. You are lucky to be here. We look at our past mistakes and seek to correct them. That does not happen back in Iran and in most of the rest of the world. They double down on the things they do to minorities. When I was growing up at the age of 11, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through our living room window. It landed right next to my feet with the wick burning. My dad saw it, grabbed it, pulled out the wick, poured out the gas. That's the only reason I'm alive to talk to you today. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you think about that, my brother. Like, that would not happen here. And there was a note on that cocktail that said, "Die, Christian scum."
Wow. That's quite something to think about. Yeah.
Dude, it is. And I am so grateful to live in freedom. And everything I do is about promoting freedom. Everything. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer in freedom of expression. You have the right to be wrong in this country. You have the right not to be attacked for having whatever view that you have. You have the right to build whatever future you want for yourself. You have the right to create a business for yourself. You have the right to create a great fortune for yourself. That's free enterprise. That's what it's all about. And my dad was an entrepreneur. He was the greatest man I ever knew. My dad was the kind of man who would go out there. He would help people get jobs. If he had a job for them, he'd give them one or help them find a job elsewhere. He would help people get their start in business. His employees, if they didn't have enough money to buy a house or a car, he'd help them out. And you'd go, really? Like, who does that? Well, my dad does that. Why? Well, one, he was a Christian. He felt, he had been blessed by God, and he had a duty to share those blessings, my dad. And then secondly, he had the financial wherewithal to do it because he was a successful entrepreneur. Right. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be like Dad. I wanted to help out my fellow man and woman. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there, John. They're good people. They got good hearts. They want to help people, but they're just not succeeding. You know why they're not succeeding? Because they're scared. They're scared. They don't want to come across like pushy. They don't want to come across like salesy. They don't want to come across like they reek of commission breath. They want to come across as good people. And so they don't go after the sale when they should. And then somebody who needed their help won't do business with them and will do business with some charlatan out there, some charlatan marketer who's going to take their money and deliver nothing. That's bad for the world. It's bad for you because you don't get the business. It's bad for that client because they don't get helped. And it's even bad for the charlatan because they don't get their comeuppance. They don't get shown. This is not the way to live. The sum total of goodness in the world goes down. So I saw this and I went, I can help these people. I'm going to help them reframe selling to serving. Nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to be served by a caring advocate. So Nicky Billou, learning from his Iranian father, brought caring to the world and showed good people how they can get out there and be successful without compromising their values.
Yeah. So what was your dad, what businesses did he run? Did he run them in Iran? And then coming to Canada, did he have to kind of start over again?
Well, he had an import-export business in medical supplies. He equipped hospitals. He didn't give up that business. He had partners there that still ran it. And in Canada, he got into real estate development. He bought and sold some properties. He had a tanning salon for a while. I worked there when I was a kid. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was my dad's thing, man. That was my dad's thing. He was a great man.
So he looked for and spotted, maybe because he was looking for it, he would spot opportunity. And, because really business is about solving problems for people.
That's all it is. Well said. It's all business is. It's about solving problems for who? For people.
For people. Yeah. So you're watching this. So when you came to Canada, you've been in Greece, which is a relatively similar climate to Iran. And, it's fairly toasty and warm over there. And then you come to Canada. And did you come to Toronto?
We came to Toronto, yeah.
And you're at this time, what, 13, 15 years old?
Just under 15, just shy of 15.
Okay. Had you been in anywhere where there was a winter? I guess maybe, I don't know.
Iran has winter, man.
It does, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite as much of a shock, coming to Canada.
Well, the length of the winter and the duration of the winter season was definitely different. We have 4 seasons that are 3 months long each. Canada has a 6-month winter,
7 months if you're in Alberta.
Yeah, there you go. 7 months if you're in Alberta, right? And how cold it was pretty intense. I mean, I'd never experienced minus 40 before.
Right. Yeah. And did you have English as a language at that time, or did it something you had to learn once you got here?
I spoke English. We spoke English in Iran.
Yeah. That was something that you learned growing up at that time?
Yes. Yeah, my mom and dad made sure we learned English. We went to American schools in Iran. We spoke English at school. It was cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Are you fluent it was in Farsi as well, or were you?
Yes, I am. Yes, I still am.
Cool. I think it's good for the brain to maintain second languages or third languages where possible. So
100%, I agree.
It opens doors, and in all the different countries that I've traveled to, it's whenever I try to at least learn some of the language, it's always opened more doors, even if I butchered the language horribly. So
yes, well said.
Yeah. So you grow up, you come to Canada. Was there any kind of culture shock coming over here?
Massive culture shock. Yeah. Massive culture shock. I mean, I came from a culture where politeness was massively valued and expected to one where politeness didn't exist. Right. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, Canadians are more polite than many other cultures, but compared to Iran, they're not. And, there was a directness to the way Canadians spoke to each other that was absolutely shocking for me. I mean, eventually I got used to it, but it took me a while. And I came from a culture where you kept your word, and it was really weird for me when people would tell me they'd call me at a certain time and not. They'd see me at a certain time and not. It was rough. It was rough from that perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, you're trying to figure out how to kind of navigate this world. Your dad's like kind of rebuilding your family life over here. What helps you get through this?
Well, listen, man, I had good parents, and they loved us, and they did everything in their power to make our life easy. They provided a great home. They sent us to good schools. They got us set up for university. My father would spend time with me and share his wisdom and knowledge with me. That was just amazing and incredible. And secondly, we're teenagers. We're trying to figure out life to begin with. It was a time where it was important to go and make our own mark, and I started to really value the freedoms we had in Canada. Canada is just a great country, man. So good, so amazing, so many incredible people. I got to travel to a lot of places. I went to Ottawa. I went to Montreal. Eventually I went to Calgary, Vancouver, Victoria, Newfoundland. Just wonderful place to be, and from my perspective, my parents couldn't have done better than bring us here.
Which is amazing. Have you ever been back to Iran to visit?
Once.
Yeah.
Once. Yeah.
How old were you when you went back, and what was that experience like?
I was 33. It was wonderful and sad at the same time. It's great to see the people, great to be in my home country, but just horrible to see what it had become. It's the people have been under the boot of the government for so long. It's hard for them to make a good life for themselves. The GDP in Iran has been stagnant for 40 years, pretty much, man. Under the Shah, it was just growing and growing and growing.
Right.
We were doing well. Now we haven't been, not so much.
So, and I think this is kind of interesting because maybe it's not so much in the conversation now as it was like a few years back, but of course the Middle East is never far from people's conversations because there's been historically tensions there that go back thousands of years, really, and Iran as a country has very rarely been painted in a positive light here in the West, and
lately,
I think
prior to 1979, it was painted very positively in the West.
Which I believe, yeah, and I think maybe Afghanistan was quite similar in that sense. It would have been a really fascinating country to visit in the 70s. I think as a sort of a crossroads for trade and whatnot. So yeah, since the revolution took place, and they've always sort of been painted as like, I don't know, the axis of evil and things like that. But I'm kind of curious what your impression is of the average Iranian people, because I don't, I'm inclined to think that probably, again, it's not a country filled with monsters, but there's maybe
country's great, government sucks. Yeah. Bottom line, country's great, government sucks.
Yeah,
people are great, government sucks.
So you go over there and you would enjoy like a lot of hospitality once you're over there, but just the quality of life, just isn't quite the same.
Quality of life can be great too, but the government sucks. You're not free. You're not free. And that's something that everyone needs to understand. We are lucky here. We have that here.
So, I mean, we could broach into slightly controversial territory and say over the last couple of years, based on what you've sort of experienced, over there and sort of experienced over here in the last couple of years, do you see it as necessary, the measures that have been taken, or do you see it as kind of an erosion of freedom and government overreach starting to
massive
take place?
Erosion of freedom and government overreach. Massive. Our current prime minister, he's a menace to society, in my opinion. What he did, cracking down on a lot of rights and freedoms through the Corona situation, was unnecessary. I mean, there were so many places that didn't do that. Sweden, South Dakota, Florida. I have a lot of family and friends in the state of Florida. Florida has got better metrics for us on, the Corona disease, the Wuhan virus, as Donald Trump calls it, because that's really actually what it is, the Wuhan virus. And they ended the lockdowns. They kept their schools open. I got Corona and I got the Delta variant, which was rough. It was really hard on me. Okay. It was not fun. I'm telling you that right now. No question about it, but there's no need to shut the economy down over that. There was no need to cause mental health issues for our children over that. And it was despicable that the government attacked the truckers for wanting to have the right to decide whether or not they took an experimental shot. That isn't a vaccine. A vaccine protects you forever. This thing, you need boosters every 3 months. Give me a freaking break, man. Give me a freaking break.
Yeah.
Come on. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, maybe a little bit sardonically, but I'm thinking the entrepreneur in you, maybe you don't respect the fact that this is being used as a ridiculous sort of entrepreneurial opportunity of sorts, but it's really crony capitalism because it's the pairing of like large pharmaceutical firms with government coercion to force this to take place against people's wills. Exactly. And so there's a lot of people who are getting very, very wealthy off of this. And of course, it doesn't really get
Moderna, Johnson & Johnson.
Doesn't get discussed in the media because, of course, the media is in the pockets of the advertisers. And so
these guys are the biggest advertisers in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Rogan did a little montage of all the major mainstream media shows in the U.S. and who their key sponsors were. Pfizer was a sponsor of every single show. And I'm like, and they're going to attack Pfizer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you, to bring it back to your story, so your father, he from a young age? Was he teaching you what it meant to be an entrepreneur?
Well, by example, yeah.
Fair enough.
He
Yeah.
did. He did. I mean, I watched him and I wanted to be like him, like I said, right? That's why I ended up becoming an entrepreneur.
Because I don't see a lot of people sort of being taught this or seeing the entrepreneurial spirit being fostered in people. We look at still maybe the way that our education system operates, and it's a good education system, but it's not really teaching people how to be
Terrible
independent.
education system. It's a terrible education system. It was designed to turn people into worker bees and soldiers. It's not an education system designed to foster individual thought, independent thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think
you got to self-educate yourself. That's why you got to self-educate yourself. One of my clients was Robin Sharma, who wrote the book "The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari."
Right.
And,
yeah.
I did a few courses with Robin too. But here's what Robin taught me. He said, if you ever want to double your income in any given year, triple your investment in personal and professional development, triple your investment in personal and professional development. And self-education is so much more valuable than formal education in this day and age. So my sons go to school. They're going to continue to go to school. But I'm going to tell you this. What I want my sons to do is I want them to take courses teaching them how to start a business. I want them to take courses on communication. I want them to take courses on, investing, crypto investing, stock investing, real estate investing. I want them to learn about all that sort of thing because they're not going to get taught that in school. They're not. They're not even going to get taught how to think independently in school. I got to teach them that, which I am.
Right. Which is a good thing. And, I've got a 18-month-old now as of today. Oh, thank you. He's a gorgeous little boy. But I think, I want to teach him a little bit about what it means to be an entrepreneur because he's not going to get taught that in school.
No way.
And so I think the fascinating part about self-education really is we get to pursue and consume and learn about what we are passionately interested in.
Yes.
And so now, maybe it could be argued that there's certain sort of foundational skills we want to develop in people, but that are not necessarily bad things to learn about. But I think like maybe I'll end up homeschooling my kid because I want to have the freedom to I want freedom to teach him a little bit differently and teach him what it means to be an entrepreneur. And so, when did you start your first business?
Well, when I was a kid, I had a business selling trinkets and trash in the neighborhood. When I was in university, I did some entrepreneurial things. When I was in my statistics class, the professor gave me the answers and said, "Hey, listen, make copies of the answers and sell them to the other kids in class because they need them." For these chapters. And I did that. And I said, you know what? I'll make copies of all the answers to all the rest of the chapters. So I let everybody know. I said, look, I made copies of all the rest of the chapters. So this is what it costs for what the prof wanted me to do for you. But if you want the rest of them, pay me this much and I'll take it. And they all did. So I made some money from that, right? It was great.
This is the pre-internet days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I worked for a company until 2001. And by 2002, I'd started working for myself and I've never looked back. It's been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what year did you graduate from university?
I got my undergraduate in 89 and I got my master's in 91.
Awesome. Yeah. So you spent 10 years working for a company and what lessons did you take? If you don't mind me asking who you worked for and what lessons you took away from that?
I worked for a variety of companies. I worked for a telecom company called Unitel. I worked for a company called ClearNet, which was bought out by TELUS. I worked for companies you probably haven't heard of, all in the technology and telecom space. And the biggest lesson I got from them is I am not meant to be an employee.
Yeah. Well, I look back at sort of my resume and people would look at it and go like, yeah, why did you do so many different things? It's like, well, because after, maybe 6 months, I was wanting to like pull my ears off and poke my eyes out if I was going to stay in this job any longer because really couldn't stand doing it. There's just something about, and being an entrepreneur is not an easy thing to do, but it's incredibly fulfilling and worthwhile. So you decided to go on your own. And so what was the first, when you went on your own in 2001 or 2002, what was the first sort of venture, or maybe you'd already started as a side hustle and now it was at a place where it could be self-sustaining, or how did that transition?
No, I was in the health and fitness space. I became a fitness coach. I created a couple programs, started selling them, worked with a couple Olympic champions. So we had a bit of a brand that we created.
Cool.
Did that for just over 10 years. And then in 2013, I started transitioning into business coaching, executive coaching, success coaching. And by 2016, I started a program helping people become established thought leaders in their space. And doing that allowed them to add $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $30 million to their business. So I've had the privilege of helping 11 people add between 1 and 38.5 million to their business, and helping about 60, 70 odd more add 100,000 to 700,000 to their business. So I like getting people paid. That's exciting for me. I like seeing somebody make a crap load of money. A lady signed up for our program back in July, and just in the month of August, she managed to make 38,000 US in sales. So just under 50,000 Canadian in sales in a single month. Makes me happy. Nicky.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, talking about these things, because there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable talking about money and talking about earning money. And I think it comes from the way that we view money. If we go back to earlier in the conversation, what you talked about, like your father and his sort of entrepreneurial ambitions put him in a position where he had the opportunity to help and to give to other people, whereas he wouldn't have that opportunity had he not pursued his entrepreneurial ambitions. And so when we hear about people making sums of money that are sort of in line with what some people make as an annual salary in a single month, I think it's very triggering for people, because they're going to be confronted with, like, sort of limiting beliefs. They maybe feel a sense of envy or jealousy or frustration and so on.
Good. I want that to do that. Right. I like triggering people. If you're getting triggered, you're too much of a goddamn snowflake anyways. Grow up and be a man or a woman. Get some balls or get some ovaries. All right? Get triggered. And if you're not feeling good because someone else is doing well, that's telling you that you're not living up to your potential, and you should smarten up and wake up and start living to your darn potential. We're not here to make people feel good about themselves. We're here to challenge them to wake up, smarten up, and fly right. That's what we do, bro. I'm not interested in people liking me or feeling good that they know me. Like, listen, I like, obviously, like everybody, I'd like to be liked, but that's not the prize. The prize is to serve people. And when I'm serving somebody, I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm not going to lie to them or coddle them. That's what the world does to too many people. And that's why people are losing. That's why they allowed these stupid restrictions to take over their lives for the last 2.5 years. That's why they didn't stand up and crush these bastards when they came up and told us we couldn't see our loved ones. Those people had to die alone because of these stupid bastards. No more of that. No more of that. People need to hear the truth, John. They need to hear the truth. I'm going to tell you a little story, okay? There was a young man who came to me at the age of 25. He was a fitness trainer at the time. His name was Dan. And Dan was a good kid, but he made no money. He made $1,500 a month on a good month, okay? He had to borrow money from his mom and dad, because if you know rent in Toronto, pretty close to $1,500 a month for him. So mom and dad had to give him money. Came to see me, and he's like, oh, okay, you know what? I think I need to go and make some money. I said, okay, so who do you work with? He goes, oh, I'll work with anybody. You mean anybody with a wallet? A pulse? Yeah. No. Narrow your niche. Okay, I'll start working with doctors then. I'll work with doctors. Why? Because doctors make money. Well, that wasn't a good enough reason, so doctors didn't want to work with them. Okay, I'll work with cardiologists. I'll narrow my niche more. Cardiologists. They make even more money than doctors. Well, I didn't really care to work with him. Kicked his ass, and I said, you can do better. Stop being such a jerkwad and just going for the money. He started working with this guy who had missing limbs. Okay, Paralympian. Paralympian medalist. And he's like, okay, I love working with this guy. This is great. I think I'm going to work with people with missing limbs. I said, hey, that sounds good. So he started to hang out a shingle there that says, I'll work with people with missing limbs. In 6 weeks, he got 400 clients. Couldn't do one-on-one anymore. Couldn't do one-on-one anymore. He went from less than 1,500 to 15,000 to 30,000, 50,000. Even made over $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why? Because we helped them serve somebody from the heart, somebody who needed their help, needed his help, I should say. People with missing limbs, nobody was going after them. So when he went after them, they responded. And they didn't just respond because they wanted to work out. They responded because this man was giving them a message that you can be just as good as an able-bodied person. And that's a powerful message. And it worked. And he got his butt kicked. Nobody coddled him. Nobody told him he was such a good guy. He was so brave. No, he wasn't brave. He wasn't being a good guy. He was being an idiot. That's why I needed a kick in the pants. When he got the kick in the pants, he fixed it up. Now, do we kick everybody in the pants? No, but sometimes you need to give someone a kick in the pants. If they're living in La La Land, don't let them live in La La Land. You know, and if you're living life and you can't handle hearing about someone else's success, go look in the mirror and ask yourself, why the hell not? You should be happy for someone else's success. When I hear someone's making $1 million more than me or $1 billion more than me, I go, bravo, man. If they can do it, I can do it. If you can do it, I can do it. John, if you can lose 50 pounds, 100 pounds, I can lose 50 pounds, 100 pounds. Not that I want to lose 50 pounds, but you know what I'm trying to say here, right? The example of success for other people is what gives us the belief we can do it ourselves.
Right. It's the stories that we see ourselves in. And I think, and there's a difference between sort of entrepreneurialism and the sort of the crony capitalism that we've talked about. I mean, corruption is kind of inescapable. And so in terms of seeing people succeed and make money, I would like to see them succeed and make money in an ethical way. And you use the term serving, but I want to circle back to just another term that you've put out there, because I think this term often gets discussed, but isn't really understood. And maybe the value of it isn't understood. And use this term thought leader. And you say you help people become thought leaders, and as such, through this means they then add value or just add money to their bottom line. How do you define a thought leader, and how does it bring value to our society?
Well, this fellow Dan that I just told you about, he became a thought leader when it came to working with people with missing limbs. But I'll give you a good definition of thought leadership. So an expert is someone who knows something. A thought leader is someone who's known for knowing something. Experts are a dime a dozen. Thought leaders are rare and valuable. Experts don't make a lot of money, have a hard time attracting clients. Thought leaders are sought after and get clients coming to them. That's the difference between expertise and thought leadership. That's really the long and the short of it.
So experts know something, and thought leaders are known for knowing something.
You got it. And they come from caring about making a difference for a group of people. So this fellow Dan, when he wanted to work with doctors and cardiologists, he was just trying to trade in on his expertise. When he started working with folks with missing limbs, because he saw how wonderful it was to work with this particular gentleman, he was a thought leader who came from caring about his fellow man and woman. And that's what we need to do for people, brother.
Absolutely. So then how does somebody who's an expert, I mean, obviously you probably have courses or programs on this that might take, months to go through. So it's kind of hard to condense into a couple of minute nutshell here, but if someone is saying,
I'll give it to you in a couple of minutes.
How does somebody become a thought leader?
So I'm glad you brought up, help and programs and so forth, because here's the truth. I can tell you how to do it in 2 minutes, but it's virtually, I don't want to say impossible, but it's highly unlikely that someone will take this 2-minute kind of explanation and run with it and transform themselves into a thought leader. And there's a number of reasons why. The most important reason is that you need guidance on the days that your belief is faltering, because your belief will falter. If you don't know how to do something, you need someone who does, so your belief doesn't falter. Because listen, right now, one of the things I'm doing is I'm learning how to build a webinar-based online funnel. Tried it a couple times in the past, and I failed miserably. Okay, miserably. So what am I doing now? I'm following some coaching and guidance on what to do, because I don't know how to do it. Right. No.
It's funny. I often tell my clients, you can borrow my belief in you until you start to believe in yourself.
I say that to people all the time myself. I say that to people all the time in myself. Now, how do you become a thought leader? Well, first of all, you got to care enough about a group of people that are suffering in a particular way from a massive problem that you want to help them. That's step one. Okay. Care. Step number two, you gotta like have the skills to solve that problem, right? If you don't have the skills, nothing's going to make you a thought leader. You can't just become a thought leader in an area you have zero skills in. Sorry, ain't going to happen, right? So you've got to have the skills to solve that problem. And you've got to be able to position yourself and how you speak about solving this problem in such a way that people get that you understand the problem. And because when you speak about a problem in a way that people see you understand it as well or better than they do, they automatically assume you know how to solve it. Let me repeat that. When you speak about a problem as well or better than the people who suffer from it, they automatically assume that you know how to solve it. So you got to do that. And then you've got to outline for people the consequences of continuing to have this problem and not addressing it. And these consequences got to go, let's just, imagine you're here and your problem is you don't make $1 million a year. Okay.
Which I don't as of yet.
Right. You don't make $1 million a year. All right. And let's just say that, you do well, but you're frustrated because you can do better. Let's just say that you beat yourself up every day because you could do better, and you see people that are making $1 million a year that aren't as good a person as you are, as smart a person as you are, don't do as much to help people as you do, and it's really bothering you. You're starting to think, oh my God, do I have to be one of those asshole charlatans to get to make $1 million a year? And you get mad at the world, and you snap at your wife, and maybe you even snap at your newborn because you're not feeling good about yourself. And there's some things that you're doing without because you don't quite have the money. You have the money to live a good life, but maybe you don't have the money to buy your dream home. Maybe you don't have the money to take your family on a worldwide, private jet trip that you've always wanted to do to all the sites you wanted to see. Maybe it's preventing you from doing some things in your business. Maybe it's preventing you from having the self-respect that you really ought to have, because when you look in the mirror, you're mad at yourself for not being as successful as you want to be. You need to go deep with people's problems and how it's affecting them and what the consequences are. And then you got to future pace those consequences. What will happen if that's still the case in 5 years or in 10 years? Maybe in 5 years, you'll be divorced because of the infighting in your marriage, right? Maybe in 5 years, you'll still be making the same amount of money or less because you're burned out and you don't even put the effort that you used to put in to make your business. You follow what I'm saying? And then you tell them, this is your hell. This is what will happen if you don't address this. Are you prepared to address this? And if they go, yeah, I'm prepared to address this, then you'll go, great. Where do you want to go? Here's your heaven. You paint out the heaven for them. Then once you paint out the heaven, right, then you just go, are you ready to go from hell to heaven? And if they go, yeah, I am, you go, great. Here's how you do it. You talk to them about your secret sauce of how you do it. Paint a high-level picture and say, are you ready to go from hell to heaven using this methodology that works? And they're going to go, yes or no, or something else. And your job as a thought leader is to get them to give you a clear decision on whether to keep staying in hell or whether to get out of hell. That's your job as a thought leader. Now, it took more than 2 minutes. It took maybe 5 minutes for me to explain that to you, but that's what it takes to be a thought leader.
Yeah, cool. And it's very interesting to hear you describe from this perspective, because I've been in mentorships, I've been mentored, I do mentoring for people to a certain level. We can only mentor, of course, to the level that we've achieved ourselves, but it's interesting to hear it from another perspective.
You can only mentor people to the level you've achieved yourself, but
yes,
as a coach, you can coach people to achieve way more than you've ever achieved. True. Phil Jackson, the coach of the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers, was never a top-level basketball player. He was not Michael Jordan. He was not Kobe Bryant. He was a mid-level player for the New York Knicks, and he won a couple championships as a player. Yeah. Good for him. Okay, but I don't think he ever averaged 20 points a game in his life. But he got Michael Jordan to average 30 points a game. He got Kobe Bryant to average 26 points a game. And he won 11 championships. So keep that in mind.
He had the ability to spot potential. See, coaching is I think the world needs more of it. Because human beings are wired to learn from other human beings. You know, if information was the issue, Google would have solved a lot of our problems. But we're still wrestling with sort of age-old human struggles that's really connected to, I guess, who we are and how we're wired. And so coaching allows us to kind of get outside of ourselves, and somebody can see something that we can't see. Because I give the example, say more up-to-date example, like Steph Curry has a shooting coach, and Steph Curry, for those who don't know, is like the most prolific shooter in professional basketball. He's the best three-point shooter probably in the history of the game. There's no way
I wouldn't give him that credit, but I'll say he's the best shooter in the game today. I'll leave it at that.
Well, now I'm curious who you think is better.
Larry Bird. Larry Legend in his prime would wipe the floor with Steph Curry. No offense to Steph. Larry Bird is the guy who walked into the three-point contest, looked at everybody in the room, and said,
"Who's coming second?"
Coming second.
Yeah,
he kept his warm-up jacket on, and he still beat their Bucks. And
you know,
that man's
only one
mind,
him, yeah.
He was a stone-cold killer. And no offense to Steph, there is nobody in the NBA today that is 1/10 the stone-cold killer that Larry Bird was. Everybody goes and they talk about, they go, oh, LeBron James is so much of a better player. And LeBron James is one of the most physically gifted athletes in history. Prime LeBron, prime Larry, I'll take Larry every time. Larry for the win, every single time. You want to know why? Because Larry would get inside that dude's head and turn him into puddle. And there's nothing he could do about it. The only man in the NBA today that has that could stand up to Larry is Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Okay,
that man's
the Greek
tough.
Freak.
The Greek Freak. He's mentally strong. The rest of them, Larry would just eat them for breakfast, man. Larry Bird played today, he'd be averaging 42 points a game, brother.
Well, and he wasn't the most physically gifted athlete. But he was.
But yet he could dunk. Dunk.
Well, he was 6'9",
rebounded
wasn't he?
10 rebounds. 6'10", actually. He
6'10", okay.
He rebounded 10 boards a game for a career. Now, Are you telling me, like, everybody says that, and I go, okay, all right. But then I watched game film of him, and he takes the ball away from Dominique Wilkins, who was probably the most physically gifted athlete of the 80s.
Thunder, yeah.
Well, no, that was.
Oh, that was Daryl Dawkins. That's right. Sorry,
Dominique was the human highlight reel.
Human highlight reel. There we go. Sorry.
Human highlight reel. One of my favorite players. I love Neek.
Yeah.
Besides Larry, he was my second favorite player of the '80s. But come on, man, I saw those guys battle it out. So Dominique would like dunk all over Larry's ass, but Larry would go up for boards against him, and he'd come up with the boards. And Nick would go, how the hell is this white man knocking me off the ball? I am jumping by like 2.5 feet. How's he getting that ball?
Yeah.
You have to have some athletic skill as well as knowledge of the game to be able to do that, man. You know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is arguably the second greatest player of all time, said that the greatest player he ever played against was Larry Bird. You know, and second greatest, according to him, was Wilt Chamberlain. I think Wilt was better than Larry, but, you know, that's just me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every generation has its version of kind of the freak of nature, who is just a brilliant combination of like physical attributes and intellectual attributes that when paired together, you know. So I didn't know you were such a basketball historian. I was a fan.
Dude, basketball, soccer, hockey.
So. But to bring it back to the original point is that someone like, say, Steph Curry has a shooting coach, and a shooting coach probably can't shoot as good as Steph can, but he can see things that Steph can't see.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Right. And that's what it boils down to. When you're working with people, you can see things other people can't see. And
look, I worked with a guy who ran a bunch of restaurants, and we took him from 2 restaurants to 16. I've never done that, but he did it with our help.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he added average from 2 to 16. There were 14, an average of, it was close to 38.5 million in extra revenue and income. It's pretty good in a year.
Not bad.
You know, not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the restaurant industry is notoriously difficult to be profitable, but Yeah.
For him, it's not. He's doing real well. He knows what he's doing.
Good. That's good. Well, Nicky, it's been a fascinating conversation. You're definitely a one of a kind guest.
Yeah.
you've got a lot of
Thank you, my
interesting
brother.
perspectives.
Appreciate it.
If I guess we'll just mention again, if people want to know more about you, they like your style, and they're like, okay, I need some straight shooting in my life. I need to talk to Nicky. Where do they find you?
I have a website called ecircleacademy.com. There's a button up there that says book a success call. And a success call is basically an opportunity to have a conversation about your business and where it's at right now and where you want it to be at, what that gap is. And then let's get real about why it's not getting there, what the consequences of it not getting there are for you in your life. And let's talk about what it's going to take to get you the next step and just see, are you ready to start avoiding those consequences? That's the conversation that I love to have with people. If someone's ready to do that, click on that button. Let's roll.
All right. We'll include the link in there. If people were to take one thing away from this conversation, what would you like them to take away?
It's a hard time right now. We've had lockdowns, and that reaction to that pandemic has been really hard on people's mental health. And the government in Canada and the United States and much of the world has done a terrible job of dealing with the economy. Inflation is running rampant, and a lot of people are scared. And if you're in business right now, I just want to tell you, don't be scared. This is the greatest time in history to create opportunity, but you're going to need help. You're going to need to invest in yourself. Remember what Robin Sharma says: to double your income in any given year, triple your investment in personal and professional development. Triple. That's what you need to do. So start investing in yourself right now and believe in yourself. Have hope. It's possible for you. You can have the greatest year of your life. The rest of your life can be magical. So start going from tragic to magic. That's the last thing I want to leave you with.
All right. Thanks so much, Nicky. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, man.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.